What's up, everybody? It's Josh at Rise Above, and this is one of the first couple of videos that's coming to the channel, and the goal here is just to document my health journey and provide some value to others who may have similar questions or want to learn more about their health or various aspects of neurology, physiology, biochemistry, etc. And my goal in doing this is to provide folks with information to benefit their health and increase their knowledge of the body, as I've had the pleasure and the luxury of studying in order to improve my own health. It is honestly as a matter of necessity. So the benefit of that, however, is that I've gained these skills and I can now provide information and value to people who may not have the time, the energy, or the desire to learn these things. And that's kind of the goal here. So pretty early stages. It's the first couple of videos, and at this point in my journey, I'm just going to be documenting some of the things that I'm working on and providing insight into my progress overall. My goal for right now is to eventually turn these documentations into more sort of fleshed out, longer term types of content with full annotated backing and study information and graphics on the screen and all of that. But for now, I'm just kind of getting started. So so just a little bit about me. And what got me started on this whole journey. So over the years, I have had a number of various neurological imbalances. So that would be everything from ADD to, which I was diagnosed with at probably 14 or 15, I want to say. Everything from ADD to depression, anxiety. Some bouts of OCD as well. That, although I must say that's not diagnosed, but I'm fairly confident about that one. And these things, these types of states tend to be comorbid, so that's why I'm fairly confident about it. But all these things, various stages of my life. So I started out with ADD at 15. I developed sort of depression and anxiety, around 19 or so. And some OCD in the mix there, and then as I got older, I tend to have kind of, I wouldn't say immature emotional life, but definitely it was more sort of wild and a bit imbalanced, right? And these types of things. So looking at coming at this from sort of a pharmacological standpoint, and just how can we improve the systems of the body and tweak brain chemistry and learn some interesting things about neurobiology and physiology to help enhance the quality of life, maybe potentially solve some of these problems with regard to specific pathophysiologies that we have. So those are kinds of the things that I went through. Additionally, I also have Lyme disease, and that's had I suspect some knock-on effects and maybe worsen the anxiety. And then on top of Lyme disease, there's generally a host of other comorbid conditions that go along with that in terms of environmental toxicity. Things like maybe heavy metal buildup, gut problems. Sorry, my light went off. Gut problems, and let's see what else. Mycotoxin buildup as a result. If any sort of detox pathway or what have you in the body becomes impaired, it tends to have a knock-on effect once you're, if you're immunocompromised or you have a buildup of a certain type of environmental toxin, becomes more difficult for you to clear out other things as well. So I got to a point in, so I always had the anxiety after, I smoked weed in college, and I think with the brain chemistry I already had, that maybe was not optimal behavior for me. And the anxiety and the OCD really got worse. And then I kind of got out into the world after college, and things got better from there. But then with the stress of day-to-day life and working a corporate job, things kind of took a turn, and especially with my interest in my entrepreneurial pursuits. I was definitely working around the clock and trying to advance my cause and figure out what I wanted to do outside of the traditional 9 to 5. So all of that stress and working 14-15 hours. I did some Uber driving as well. It was a lot, and I think it created a lot of stress in my body, and I think maybe the Lyme got a foothold at that point. So anyway, so fast forward to last year, and I'm 30 now, by the way. Fast forward to last year, the anxiety was getting really bad. I couldn't, I could like barely make it through the day, and I was like, I really got to look into this for myself, and take responsibility for what's going on, and try to learn and figure out so that this, number one, so this stops happening, but also so that I never have to depend on someone else to fix my problems for me ever again. I've always had that attitude once I got out into the world anyway, but I've always kind of had that attitude, like, I want to figure out what's going on here. I don't want to leave it to somebody else to tell me something. So, and there's more about that, but maybe I'll go into it later in terms of the background of why I chose to do that. But so fast forward a good 14, 16 months later, been balls deep in research papers, and I've got probably like 500 to 800 pages of notes on various clinical studies. I'm working on setting up a gene analysis program for myself, and I plan to share that. Details about that and all the things I'm learning. And for the time being, while I'm gaining knowledge, the channel initially is going to be sort of you want to call it a diary or something, but I just want to document the journey so that people can kind of see what goes into it and the kinds of things I'm learning, and also create a roadmap so that I can turn around and provide you guys with the full annotated value with all of the papers and graphics and all of that stuff, so that you can learn and help make better decisions about your health and take the knowledge into your hands. Of course, that would also include sort of information about different interventions that might be of use, various classes of drugs, mechanisms of action of various drugs, things like that, and research on different ways to improve your physiology and your neurology, and providing that sort of value for you guys. So I genuinely think that in the age of the internet, there's a real, you don't have to be an expert, but it's generally advantageous to learn as much as you can and take an active interest in your health, at least especially while you're healthy, because trust me, when your health goes away, there's nothing else you want more than that. So so just to piggyback off of the video that I put up last weekend, currently I just finished up or I'm in the finishing stages of determining the results of sigma-1 agonism with regard to oxidative stress, and particularly the mitochondria and the process that occurs in the mitochondria. So with regard to creating ATP, which is the natural source of energy in the body. From the results I found, so the drug donepezil that I was talking about, that I started the intervention with, it's a sigma-1 agonist, which sigma-1 is a receptor in the body, and there are various different types of receptors in the body. There are, like acetylcholine receptors, dopamine receptors, nicotinic receptors, serotonin receptors, you name it. There's, dozens and dozens of different types of receptors in the body, and what they all do is essentially they all encode a response to trigger a reaction and stimulate some sort of process in the body. So you can agonize receptors, which is what's called a ligand, couples to that receptor and initiates a response, generally some sort of reaction. You can antagonize a receptor, which is to block the function of that receptor, and then there's inverse agonism, which is something attaches to that receptor and basically creates a negative response on the receptor. Those are three very basic forms of receptor response or interaction. What we call ligand interaction with the body. You guys have to forgive me on some of the terms. I'm still learning, but so anyway, so donepezil is a cholinesterase inhibitor, which cholinesterase is a enzyme in the body which is responsible for the breakdown of acetylcholine, which is the primary neurotransmitter in the brain responsible for memory and recall and clarity and things like that. So essentially the goal with donepezil is to inhibit the breakdown of cholinesterase, therefore increasing the amount of acetylcholine, which is like I said, the neurotransmitter associated with memory synthesis and focus and things like that. And I'm talking about like focus and recall, right? Not like dopamine, which is more of a motivational type of focus. Yeah. So the goal there is to increase memory retention, recall, and assimilation. So by increasing the amount of acetylcholine in my central nervous system, which donepezil does, it enables me to theoretically enhance my ability to recall things, and I got an infrared light in the back here, so when my screen goes off, that's what you guys are seeing. Basically to recall things, and that's kind of what the intervention's for. So, but the sigma-1 agonism part, so donepezil and its metabolites, they bind not only to the they not only inhibit the enzyme that breaks down that acetylcholine I was talking about, it's also a sigma-1 agonist. The sigma-1 is a receptor which stimulates a kind of growth pathway, and essentially what it does, and from my understanding, it's not a complete and full review of the literature, but among the things that it does is it also upregulates the production of brain-derived nootropic factor, which is sort of a growth factor in the brain. The stimulation of growth factor in the brain has been shown to have an anxiolytic, meaning anti-anxiety effect, and also help form new neural connections and promote remodeling after sort of ischemic attacks, meaning say you have a stroke or even cardiac ischemia, which is damage to the loss of oxygenation of the heart, these types of things. So generally when growth pathways are upregulated, it's you would have a lot of growth factors in your body as a kid, possibly natally as well, infants. I've looked at the literature for that, but that's the general goal. So upregulating growth factors. Now, as a consequence of that, as I mentioned in my last video, sigma-1 also has an effect on mitochondria, and particularly with regard to ATP production. ATP production happens in two stages. There's the first part, which is glycolysis, which happens in the cytosol of the cell. Glycolysis is basically the breakdown of glucose into something called pyruvate, and then pyruvate goes through oxidative respiration, in short, to produce ATP. Now, in the oxidative, the cellular mitochondrial respiration, excuse me. Basically, there are 4 complexes of enzymes within those within that portion of the process that help create the ATP, and they're differentially affected by the sigma-1 agonists. So, particularly with regard to the cancer investigation I was doing, the idea was that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't causing any untoward changes in the synthesis of ATP, and those complexes of enzymes that I talked about. So there's 4 complexes and maybe a 5th. I have to recheck, but complexes 1 and 3 are generally the ones that produce the most what are called reactive oxygen species. And I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about oxidative stress, sort of a type of inflammation. But oxidative stress is essentially where, due to natural processes in the body, or maybe pathological conditions, or exogenous toxins, or meaning coming from outside the body. During the process during the normal processes of the body, there are certain electron transfers, and electrons can come uncoupled during that process and create what are called reactive oxygen species. And these are the little guys that cause all kinds of trouble in the body, and they cause that oxidative stress that you guys have heard so much about. So there's complex 1 and complex 3 in the second part of the ATP production process, which produce the most reactive oxygen species, which is fine, provided everything's working normally, right? There's these reactive oxygen species are actually required at some level for normal cellular communication to occur, right? There's something called the secondary messenger system, which we would have to talk about probably in another video. So essentially, sigma-1, in addition to all those growth factors and forming like new neural connections, dendritic outgrowth, increasing long-term potentiation in the hippocampus, which is just a fancy way of saying it helps your hippocampus to remember things better. It has an effect on the complex 1 portion of the mitochondrial respiration process. So my goal was to figure out, does this cause any sort of possibly carcinogenic or tumorigenic, meaning cancer causing or tumor promoting effects. So essentially what I've found is that and what should I do in terms of like apoptosis? Like, should I be trying to promote apoptosis or what's called autophagy to help offset that? So what I found from the research generally is that autophagy and the reason for that is, let me back it up for a second. The reason why I would be looking at that would be let me just put this behind, because I'm looking at the image of myself and not the camera, so this will be more helpful. But the reason why I am looking at that is, like, let's say this hypothetically were to induce some sort of tumorigenesis or carcinogenesis, which is not very likely, because I've studied the literature. I've looked at the documentation from the, I forget what they're called, labels. I looked at the insert label for the drug. I looked at the studies and everything, and there doesn't seem to be any significant carcinogenesis. They treat cancer patients with it for memory loss and cognitive difficulties. But I'm thinking, let me just be extra safe. And so apoptosis and autophagy would be a way to make sure that autophagy is a way for the cell to sort of heal itself and downgrade dysregulated or toxified portions of the cell or the mitochondria, and apoptosis is basically a cell death mechanism, whereby the cell basically reaches a point and says, like, you know what, this isn't sustainable. The cell is potentially getting out of control, or there's too many components that are irredeemable, we have to terminate, basically. So it helps prevent those. It prevents the cell from getting to a phase essentially where it either becomes cancerous or just generally problematic. So I'm thinking if I'm increasing potentially reactive oxygen species, I should make sure that I know how to get the cell to do what it needs to do to prevent that. Now, what I've found essentially is that those mechanisms are extremely tightly regulated, right? So both of those, autophagy and apoptosis, they're sort of interlocking procedures, or what was the word I was looking for? Processes. They're interlocking processes, and they're very tightly regulated. And it would be very difficult to tease out exactly what you're looking for. And I did look at it in the context of chemo prevention, which is cancer prevention, and sort of treating cancer as well. Just from what I learned about those processes, like I said, sigma 1 sort of increases the activity of that complex 1 in the respiration process, but I'm thinking, okay, how do I offset that? And it seems that from what I'm seeing, given how complex those mechanisms are, I may be best served basically just increasing antioxidants in order to, which is kind of one of the things, you hear a lot about antioxidants. Is kind of one of the things that help offset those reactive oxygen species I was talking about. So I'm fairly confident that I kind of have an understanding. Of course, like I said, the mechanisms behind autophagy and apoptosis are super tightly regulated. They're interconnected. Intrinsic and extrinsic pathways and all that. And autophagy sometimes triggers apoptosis. Sometimes autophagy, there's something called autophagic cell death. And basically just from reading about those mechanisms, they're extremely tightly regulated, and it's not really understood exactly what can go wrong with regard to, when, say, let's say cancer happens, what exactly caused those processes to go tits up, essentially. So, but what I did find is that in cancer, the cell essentially is in sort of an accelerated state of metabolic hunger. Let's say the cell is requiring an extraordinarily large amount of energy in order to grow, and basically do its cancerous thing. So, and that metabolic process actually occurs in the first phase of ATP production. What is that glycolysis I was talking about? Essentially, since the reactive oxygen species generally come in the second portion of ATP production, I think I can counteract that portion basically with with some antioxidants. I've been doing a lot of research on melatonin, and I'm probably going to talk to you guys about that. I plan on doing maybe a series about it. I found so much interesting literature, melatonin in cancer, melatonin for cancer prevention, cancer treatment, cardiac problems, neurological problems. It does so many different things in the body. It's also produced inside the mitochondria as well, at much higher levels than is produced by the pineal gland. So, but my best bet, I think, is to use antioxidants, since those mechanisms are so tightly regulated, just to reduce the overall oxidative stress, help support the second part of the ATP production process, and reduce any reactive oxygen species that are created by the increased activity of that complex 1 series of enzymes I was talking about. Interestingly, melatonin actually also induces something called the Warburton effect. There's a scientist in the 1920s who basically found that melatonin actually normalizes the metabolic state of the the mitochondria during that first phase of the cell during that first phase of ATP production, which is the glycolysis. It's very interesting stuff, and obviously it's still being studied for therapeutic purposes. But I think, given the information that I'm finding about it, great reduction of reactive oxygen species, normalization of that metabolic stage of ATP production and glycolysis. It makes a very compelling case for that possibly to be something worth pursuing, and I'll keep you guys informed and updated as that goes forward. I've still got probably like 20 papers to leaf through, and there were also a bunch more specific to like neuroprotection and cardiac protection. That I've set aside and I plan to basically cover for the channel and provide you guys with that information and value. So basically, that's kind of where we're at for now. So I'm gonna wait. We're doing the intervention right now, and I'm gonna kind of wait and see what the effects are. The first 3 or 4 days or so on donepezil, I had sort of a brain fog and a return of some of my anxiety, but that's gone away. Just a matter of patience there. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what the sort of neurogenic, meaning neuron generating, and dendritic growth I'm going to kind of experience, what that's going to do for my memory and my recall, etc., my verbal fluidity, all of these things. I'm at about 10 or 11 days right now. So it's just a matter of seeing what's going to happen, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, yeah. And as for the research, so I'm doing that right now, and kind of researching ahead on the oxidative stress portion of things, just to make sure that that's all properly regulated. And I had some success earlier with my serotonergic experiments, meaning the serotonin system. And those types of things, like I said in my last video, they greatly reduced some oxidative type stress type of symptoms that I was experiencing. So I do think that my next step is probably going to be adding in some antioxidants. But I'll cover more of that as we go along. So that's going to be the next step, and I'll keep you guys informed. I still have a little bit of literature to read through. But I'll give you guys updates on that, in the videos to come. So once this donepezil thing is completed, I'm exploring something called cerebrolysin, which there's a guy called Leo in Longevity. I really love his channel. I've watched a lot of his content, and I recommend you guys check him out. It's sort of a similar type of quasi-serotonergic, but sort of growth factor related intervention you can use. It is intramuscularly injected, so it's not really for the faint of heart. And of course, anything I say here, it's not medical advice, and of course you need to do your own research and talk to a doctor before you try anything. But I'm just keeping you guys informed and updated on kind of what I'm up to and what I'm interested in, and the results, and the literature and all of that stuff's going to come. So but once all of this is done, and like I'm happy with where my neurologic function is at. I've come a long way already from not being able to recall things I'd done a few minutes ago, or I had a lot of those moments where it's like, what's the name of that thing, that person, that movie? I couldn't recall it, and I'm doing a lot better with everything I've instituted. So once I'm happy with where my neurologic function is at, I'm going to move on to rehabilitating the gut microbiome, making sure that my gut cell lining is on point, that there's minimal permeability, help reduce some of that autoimmune, some of those autoimmune reactions that I might have from that. I do have a bit of flaky skin here, and I've got some thyroid antibodies as well. Some irritation on my foot. It's probably too much information, but hey, it's a health channel, so. And we're going to move on to that, and then from there, that might take a good 6-8 months, maybe longer. And then from there, I'm going to move on to environmental toxins and making sure that those things are out of the body or reduced in as much capacity as possible. So it's really like sort of a neurological optimization, physiological optimization, and a lot of the things are going to come out of that. I think this is going to be a really, really great journey together, and actually, I'm glad I finally started documenting this stuff. So, yeah, I hope you guys are looking forward to a great ride, because I'm really happy about what I'm doing here at this content, and I think I'm going to be able to provide a lot of value to a lot of people. So, thanks for checking in, guys, and I appreciate you being here. If you found this to be interesting, or or any way entertaining or educational, I'd appreciate if you just subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, maybe leave a comment, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon.